Hey everyone, Jim here. I'm going to talk to you today about the Demilec 200 Heatlok soy-based closed cell spray foam. Wow, that's a long word. I'm going to give you an online review of it today in an attic that we're insulating. And as a homeowner, I've had no experience with this stuff, and I've decided there wasn't much online that I would just do this review now that we've sprayed it to give you some of the benefits and some of the things you need to be careful of after you use the product. So anyway, let me give you a little background. This is the room here that we foam so you can see it. It's a nice little light blue color. Stuff looks kind of cool actually. Just to give you some background, this is an 1840s house. It's historic. The outside is clapboard. It's got beautiful moldings on it. It looks like a very classical house. It's actually called a Greek Revival. This is in upstate New York. There's lots of them here. And so this is a tiny little room, which is over the kitchen, which was previously unfinished. And in 160 years, it was never finished. The height of the ceiling up here is only 7 foot. It's tiny. I'm 6'2", so I barely fit in it as it is. And the side walls are only 2 foot high. And so this was typical of called it eyebrow colonial style at this time, where they had basically 12-foot walls or 11-foot walls and used 8 foot for story one, and then put a little gable on top of it to make a little storage or sleeping space. So anyway, this was never finished, and largely because there just wasn't enough space to do it. All of these walls were open. You could see the siding on them. The bays between the rafters were completely open, largely just because, again, they couldn't do it. There wasn't enough room to insulate in here and not enough way you could do it to keep headspace. And so this product, the Demilec 200, has actually allowed me to finish the space that was never finishable before. And the reason is simple, because if you have an old house, you'll find that a lot of the structural members aren't what you would be code today. So this dark rafter here is actually only a 2x4. And these original 2x4s were spaced 26 inches on center. And so there was really only 5 of them in this room on both sides holding up the entire roof. And so all we had in here in 26 inches was 4 inches or 3.5 inches really of bay space. And so that was not enough to do conventional insulation. I had people come in and say, oh, you have to do roof venting and you have to have, channels in there for the airflow from your soffit. And that's the standard vented solution. That just simply wasn't possible here. I had people telling me to do it. And I'm like, if I'm a hobbit and I want to crawl in this room, then maybe I can do that. This solution here, this is closed cell foam, so it does create a vapor barrier and provides almost 7 R7 per inch. So in the 3 inches I managed to get in here, I'm getting an R20, which is pretty phenomenal for this tiny room. Again, new construction code wouldn't allow that, but again, this is the best you can do in a historic house. And so again, you can take a look at how the foam came together. Again, it did pretty good. And so another advantage of this, and I'll show you over here, is again, in this area here, this is actually a secondary attic, which goes through that door, which I just framed using an old historic door. I cut it down. And I'll just open up and show you that this is going to remain unfinished for now. I just couldn't get to it. And so what I had to do was custom frame a wall to tie together the old room with this one here. So you can see this vertical studding is new, but what that meant is I had to insulate that wall, and there was just tons of nooks and crannies everywhere. Trying these roofs together created a nightmare of small sticks in every place where I where I needed to add framing to complete this. And so again, these were all 2x4s, or even in this little space, these members are 2x3s. And so I almost had no space to insulate. And so the foam, again, expands and fills gaps. That's what it's for. And there's just no way that anyone could have put in bad insulation or any other kind of insulation in this to actually have completed this. So now I'm very pleased with the outcome so far. The stuff went on quick. There was very little smell issue. I was worried about it. It was actually fine. My pregnant wife and child were down in the kitchen and didn't notice anything. There was just some smell in this room which dissipated. So that was great. I think it looks good. It adhered well. It's rock solid. You can pound on this thing and the roof basically is, it's added some structural strength to it. But there are some issues. And, as a homeowner with no experience, I'll share some of my insights as sort of a DIY guy. I did all of this. And if you have an old house, you kind of got to be that way. So first things first is that while this stuff expands to fill voids, it doesn't expand as much as you think. I think with this closed cell stuff, you get like 50% expansion. And when you're looking at something as complicated as this, with all these members in the way and little tiny, this is a little micro base space that's about 6 inches wide that I had to frame in to hold these new walls. You just, the applicators, I don't know if it's normal or whether it's the company or whether this is just the kind of foam, they couldn't get everything. And after I came in and inspected it, I noticed a number of little different issues, like holes, like that goes back to the studding. This, like, here's a gap they missed completely. That goes up to the sheathing along here. And, and part of it is they come in with in their moon suits with a pretty big equipment. And ideally, when you look at it on TV and they're spraying the newly framed studs, they've got plenty of space to work with. Here they had to like curve the gun and try to get behind different things and shoot behind a lot of weird stuff that I had to put in to make this work. And so for the most part, it's filled in. But again, if I inspect it closely, there are misses. And so, again, and I found them in a number of different places, but overall, I'm actually not alarmed by this. Here was another one here, because for the most part, this has been well filled in. And again, I'm gonna go back in the secondary attic so you can kind of see how, like there it is, it's oozing between the old purlins in the old roof system. So it did fill in most of the stuff when they did it right. However, again, as I said, when I added some weird framing, like say to hold the switch, they couldn't get behind it. I know there's some airspace in there. It's probably thin. So again, as the homeowner, I'm not too concerned by this. Maybe I should be, but I just don't have the experience to know if this was a good install or not, honestly. But with a couple of cans of wide expanding good stuff, spray foam cans, I feel like I can pretty easily go through this whole thing and meticulously fill in each gap and just put the spray in there with the little tiny nozzle. And I feel very confident that I'm going to be able to close up all of the things that were missed. It's probably about an hour of work. But it's something I didn't realize I would have to do, and I didn't have experience with the limitations of this or whatever. And so my first tip here is, if you're a homeowner and doing this, keep an eye on it after it's done. Take a look at it. And the company that did this for me actually tried to do a decent job with this, because their plan was they came in and they sprayed and they basically said, okay, Mr. Homeowner, after we're done, we're going to take you up there while our guns are still hot and walk around and inspect it. And anything that looks missed, we're going to shoot it, which they did. We actually found a couple of spaces that were missed. But again, as a homeowner, my wife and child were downstairs. I'd never done this before. It was quick. I just ran upstairs. We found a few things, but I just, I couldn't find everything. And in hindsight, after they left, it was clear that there were gaps. And so basically, as a homeowner, I recommend you inspect it. Use good stuff to fill in the gaps. I think you'll be fine. If you're a spray company, I would strongly recommend, particularly working on old house retrofits with weird framing like this, that you offer a follow-up fine-tuning service. Either you have someone on site who can meticulously go through it the same day, or you have somebody come out a few days later with a different set of eyes with their spray foam cans and literally go through and do what I'm about to do, and go in and fill out anything, any little gaps that have been missed. And again, I think this would probably be about an hour to go through and do this. That would be valuable, I think, for a company who is spraying this stuff. So another thing about this is shrinkage. If you look online, there are people who talk about shrinkage of this closed cell spray foam and open cell spray foam and have had problems with it. And often it said it was linked to moisture. And so I wanted to actually confirm through field testing that there is a few issues with that. Again, I sprayed this about 3 days ago. And for the most part, again, everything is very tight. I don't see any issues. But interesting enough, this is a metal roof on this that has some leaks in the seams, and I've been actually sealing them right before this project started, and I've gotten most of them done, but the few of them I couldn't get to. And the day before they sprayed, there was a small rainfall, and I came in here and checked, and there was a leak around this particular rafter, and I think one more, a light one, which actually caused the rafter to be a little bit damp. There was a vertical seam on the roof that was leaking. And so I was like, ugh. And so the night before, I tried to dry it out, and the morning of, it actually felt dry to me. And I was thinking about putting a heat gun on it, and but it felt dry, so I didn't worry about it. But lo and behold, if you can see on this rafter, there's a slight discoloration line right here, and that is basically where it was wet. And guess what? It separated right there on that seam, just a little bit. And so what happened is this stuff heats up, and my guess is they sprayed it in there. Even though it was fairly dry to the touch, the wood was probably still too moist, and the heat probably, caused the, water to evaporate a little bit and push out and just cause some interference with the adhesion to the foam and created that little gap. So this is true field testing that a little bit of moisture can cause problems with this stuff. Everything else is fine. This is the only area I noticed it, and the only area that was a little bit damp pre-spray. So, again, as a homeowner, I'm going to be able to fix that without a problem. I'm going to let this go for another week or two before sheetrocking it, but I should be able to put in good stuff and caulk it or whatever to kind of correct that little problem. But again, as a homeowner, I would recommend, if you're going to be spraying, that before you spray an old house, that you make sure it's dry. And if you're in the summertime, put a dehumidifier in for a few days before you shoot it. Or if you're in winter, put in a space heater for a few days to really heat up the space so that you get nice dry humidities, which sucks out moisture. I think that's just gonna make for a better product. I would have done that if I had known better, but again, I've never done this before, so I'm going as I've learned. And so I think that's pretty much it. Again, I'm very satisfied with this whole thing. A few final recommendations for those of you who love old houses. Like, here's the old framing on here. This is an inside wall now, so it doesn't need to be insulated. There was some old crappy bad insulation falling out of this before I did this. This is an antique house, and one of my concerns about spray foam was basically gluing together the entire house with a bunch of permanent, undoable foam. And so behind these walls, these are all newly studded walls. What I did is I built a secondary wall around the existing original framing. And so behind these, there's an old 8x8 oak top plate here with some old studding. In this wall, there's some antique studding with the top plate that goes across the bottom here, and it's really old. It's beautiful work, honestly, but it's irregular. For those of you who know this kind of thing, it's not normal regular studs because this was a post and beam thing. And on attached to those were all the wood siding on the house. And in old houses, that wood siding needs to be restored. Occasionally you're painting it. There may be rot spaces on it, and you're going to take pieces of siding off and do work on it. And the last thing I wanted to do was spray foam directly into the old cavities of the house. I just knew it. My instincts were I don't want to glue this thing together. If I'm on the outside and I've got a rotted board, I will, have stuff oozing out from under the siding. I'll never be able to get it off. And these old houses are meant to breathe. The outside shell where the wood siding is meant to be open so that if it does get a little bit moist, it airs out and stays fine. So what I did is I put a layer of OSB, as you can see here, along the old studding. I had to shim it to get it all straight along the entire structure. And then I framed in, I put a new flooring in and beams in down below, and then framed in 2x6 walls on the inside of it with the OSB. So now we had a nice, simple surface here to hold the spray foam. The only place I couldn't do it was the ceiling. This is actually sprayed directly into the old bays with the old purlins up in this space with the metal roof directly on top of it. I wasn't happy about it, but it's the best I could do. It's a tiny space, and it was the only way forward. And so we'll see how it goes. Everything I read says it should be fine. For again, there isn't a lot of experience, but we did it, and so far it looks pretty good. And so we'll have to see how it goes. So anyway, that's enough of this review. And again, this is the Demilec 200 Heatlok soy product. I'm very pleased with it overall. Very little smell issues. Seems like it performed pretty well, but it does require a little bit of fine tuning. You know, so again, if you're a contractor, make sure you do that fine tuning, or you know, have the nozzles and the kinds of equipment that you need to be able to get into those little nooks and crannies a little bit better. But again, overall, I'm not at all dissatisfied. I think this is going to be great, and it's finally helped me finish a room that never been able to finish before. So anyway, good luck on your project. I've got another video to post to this room before I actually did this. If you have any questions, post a comment, and I'll try to answer it. All right, thank you very much.